time today, and yesterday my video didn't let's go quick. We don't got a lot of time today. We're going to talk about the book. Sorry for the video quality. We're doing it reversed because I've been having troubles with the phone. We're moving into it. We're talking about the book today. Yes, the book. And you would go, what is the book? Well, I started writing probably in 2009. How old would I have been? 15, 16, 17, whatever. Started writing in high school. The writing sucked, of course, because I was in high school. But, I was writing. And I did finish a few books. And they sucked, but I finished some books. So I've been running for a long time. And, recently, within the last couple of years, I was finally able to finish a short story called Fog of Ypres. And then I sent that out to some people in the industry, kind of. Not just like my personal friends and family, and they came back and they said, this isn't bad. I was encouraged. They liked it. I think I spoke about this in a previous video. So that gave me a little bit of confidence. What does that mean to you? It means I've been writing for a while and I'm not the worst. Anyway, we're going to talk about writing today and the book. The book is codenamed Gemmell. That's not actually what it's called. It's just a name. It's a working title, so we're going to call it Gemmell. So I've been working on Gemmell for my entire life. Gemmell it started off as an epic fantasy novel with all the standard trappings of elves and dwarves and trolls, and it was honestly more of a cyberpunk is kind of what I was writing it as. I didn't even know what that genre was. That's why it's funny. I had no idea I was writing. It wouldn't have been, you would want to say an urban fantasy, but it was basically cyberpunk. Very close to what Shadowrun was. If you've ever played the tabletop RPG Shadowrun, it was similar to that. Now, not anywhere near that because it's evolved, but that was the foundation. I remember I experienced Shadowrun and I said, wow, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know that you could take like a Tolkien-esque fantasy almost and then bring it to like a modern realm. It changed my perspective on things. I'm like, what if you give the dwarf a shotgun? That's fucking nuts, right? So that's a little bit of Gemmell right there. Something I've been struggling with lately though, and this is just I think my brain, it's me as a writer. Not all the writing is like this, but I struggle with the need for me to attempt to not have plot holes. But beyond that, to be able to explain things in a semi-logical, rational manner. I will give you a little example of that, maybe Star Wars. Absolutely nothing makes sense in Star Wars. That's how George Lucas wrote it. It's a space opera. Ships are fast because they look fast. There's no semblance of propulsion or how the technology works in space. He doesn't care about any of that. It's there, it looks cool, we love it. Why did the Empire use TIE fighters and they're so crappy? And we as fans want to fill in the backstory. Listen, that's just how it was, right? Why did the rebels blow the Death Star up so easily? Why would they have such a design flaw? Well, we got multiple books and a movie on it. At the end of the day, when Lucas was writing that back in 77, 78, 79, it was there because that's what furthered the plot. There was no other logic behind that. I'm sure he had his own backward drafts, but I don't think that George Lucas was see, this is the thing. George Lucas wasn't sitting there going, it doesn't really make any sense for the Empire to have this massive flaw in a battle station like that. And well, actually, it's because Emperor Palpatine had the Tarkin Doctrine, and it was a fail-safe protocol in case Tarkin ran out with it. See, we as fans want to put that in there. That wasn't there, okay? That wasn't there. You got the trench run, you got the turbo lasers, it was cool. Now me, though, not necessarily being one of those fans, but I do enjoy that dialogue. I like to explore that. So in my own writing, I like to have a little bit more logic. I'll give you another example. This is another writing example. For the anime fans out there, there's an anime called Initial D. It's a racing anime. Well, they made another one recently. It's on Crunchyroll called MF Ghost. MF Ghost, the very first episode, and this is like my brain is broken. You enter Kanata, the main character, and he goes to Japan, and in Japan, or maybe the whole world, essentially vehicles have been banned, combustion engines, it's all electric. Anyway, long story short, before the race begins, we have our characters talking. One character looks at Kanata and goes, oh my God, it's 10 minutes until the race begins. Oh, wow. And they all scramble to get in the car and get ready, and he leans in, but like we're talking 30 seconds before this race begins. Imagine this in like an F1 race. And he goes, all right, man, it's a pretty difficult course. I don't know if we went over it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Now, I know. Follow me. Yeah, there's a lot of things that don't make sense in everything, and we have to suspend our disbelief, and it's there to further the plot. At the end of the day, it got that scene moving, we transitioned, we've got Kanata in the car, we give the viewer the information they need. Kanata goes, oh, I've already memorized the course. And we've entered that differently. The way that I would write it fundamentally changes episode 1, and it might actually not move along at the same way. At the end of the day, you got to get it moving. They've got 24 minutes. I understand that as a writer. I get it. However, for me as a writer, you can't do that because it doesn't make any fucking sense. Could you imagine if you've got like Max Verstappen in Formula 1 and he shows up and he's just having a drink with his friends and they go, oh shit, Max, there's 10 minutes to the race, man. And this whole multi-million-dollar Formula 1 team scrambles to go fit. Like, see what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. In my own writing, I want to avoid that. But it's tough. There are positives and negatives to this. Something I've struggled with in my own writing while doing Gemmell is I've got my main characters, they're brothers, awesome, they're badasses, of course. And I always love the idea of my main character just having an enormous hand cannon of a weapon. This is awesome. When I was younger, that was the gun. You know, like this almost like Helsing ultimate massive 16-inch long Smith & Wesson 500 handgun. Cool. After doing many hours of research and just watching gun videos and things like that, you realize that no elite military operator would ever go into combat and their sidearm would be a Smith & Wesson 500. That just doesn't make any sense. If he's even drawing, if you know anything about warfare, you would understand that, you know, the pistols are almost akin to swords. So if an active military fighter, we'll just use like a U.S. Marine, if a Marine's pulling his sidearm, if he even has one, in a firefight, serious shit's gone wrong. So he's probably not even going to pull his handgun. I don't know if it would be a Glock or a Beretta. He's not going to use that. He's going to use his rifle or, you know what I mean, whatever, his carbine, whatever weapon he has. Hold on.
Take your woodwork. My phone.
So we would never do that. So I can't ever have my main character have this weapon. At some point he'll get it, but I've had to rewrite it. You know, just logic. He does not use that weapon. I cannot tell you in one sentence that this human being is a elite military fighter of several, you know, decades of fighting, and he's amazing and he's awesome and he's super cool. And then I go, yeah, he pulls out this enormous 16-inch hand cannon with 6 rounds. It doesn't make any sense, right? I've read some Tom Clancy and stuff. That's another thing. I like to get a little bit more in depth. So that's the drawback, is I can no longer have my main character have this really cool gun because it just doesn't make any sense. I could, but then the story changes because I can't take the story seriously. You know, it's like when you watch John Wick and stuff like that. I mean, John Wick exists, especially the first one at least. It was cool. And we know that John Wick's a badass. And what I loved about John Wick, of course, and we all loved it, is there's actually similarities. It's funny, when I first started writing Gemmell, John Wick didn't exist. There was Constantine, and I actually based a lot of my main character off of Keanu Reeves' Constantine. He has the appearance of him, he has some of the mannerisms, was perfect. And then John Wick comes out, my character had longer hair. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I wrote John Wick before John Wick. Anyway, not actually, but the idea of just long-haired Keanu Reeves, really tactical with a gun. But John Wick is awesome, and they give you just enough realism, just enough with his reloads and the way that he approaches combat that it makes sense. So, you see what I'm saying? And that's been a struggle of mine with Gemmell specifically. I've got a couple other fantasy books. I've got a very, like, I would call it like stock fantasy, and it was something that I was writing because it was just I was putting too much effort in, I guess, the other book, and I needed something quick, right? And even that started to get a little bit more. I think that's just me. I just need to explain things. They have to be there. It has to make some sense, just a little bit of sense. And I think that's what the reader needs. They don't need a lot. It's like, how would I describe it? That's what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to write what I would like to read. And I don't, oh man, I read some Tom Clancy recently. I'm doing Neuromancer, which is the first cyberpunk book. I just read, I actually went all the way back and read The Crystal Shard by Ari Salvatore for Legend of Drizzt. That was like my Lord of the Rings, was Legend of Drizzt. That's when I got into fantasy. My uncle was a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan growing up, like you know, Edition 1 D&D, right? Like some Stranger Things shit. Like that's what the boys were playing. So that's where it comes from. I'm gonna have to pull over here. This is going on too long. I got too much to say. We're already 11 minutes. Oh my God. So it's, and in all of those books, you're always going to have plot holes. You know, I'm not saying my book's not going to have plot holes. I'm not smart enough to recognize the holes that are there. But I'm trying to give you, the reader, as you're reading it, just enough where you go, oh, that's cool. Like he thought, like the writer thought of this. If I have my handgun using a revolver, something simple like that, I'm going to count the bullets. I'm going to count the bullets that are coming out of that revolver because he's got 6. Maybe he's got 5 if it's a really big revolver. You see what I'm saying? If he's got a shotgun, is it semi-automatic? Do you need to pump it? And we need to describe what's going on and why that's happening. And you see what I'm saying? So, let me pull over here. It's been a great issue of mine, I guess, because before, there we go, we'll pull it right here. In the previous videos, I was talking about my best friend being obsessed with styles and genres, specifically styles in art. And he was making all of this art, and it looked very good. And he was never satisfied with it because he hadn't found his style. He was replicating in a way. He could look at something and go, I'll do that. Like Tyler Stout, for example, very good artist, very unique style. Just Google Tyler Stout and you'll see what I'm saying. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a really cool art style. My buddy's drawn some like that where I'm like, I don't want to say it's better than Stout, but I enjoyed his work more than Stout's because it was his take on it. So what I'm doing right now, specifically with Gemmell, is I need to find my voice for that book. We all have a voice in writing, but you can have different, and it's different than tone, and it's not genre. I'm trying to find what I want out of Gemmell for the reader. How far do we go in there? So it's almost like what I despise about fantasy and epic fantasy, and that's why I don't read it anymore, there's nothing wrong with it, is that it is bloated. I don't believe personally that it takes you 1,000 pages to get somewhere. I don't think that you need 15,000 pages or 15 books in a series to get to the Dark Lord. I don't think it takes that long. I think that people waste time and there's filler, and if I could take, I haven't read Wheel of Time, so that's not fair, but my friends are huge Wheel of Time fans, and it feels like, from what I've been able to understand, is that you could really condense that and get it to the end within 3 books. Tolkien did it in Lord of the Rings, and I would say that he wastes, I don't want to say wastes, for me, and this was written a long time ago, there's a lot of time in the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring before we really get to where we want, especially if you've watched the movies, Peter Jackson's, which I think, the fandom is divided. I think he did a wonderful job. There was a lot of love. It's not perfect, especially if you're a diehard Tolkien lore fan, but I don't think you can watch it. It's not like the Halo TV series, right? That's hot. Holy shit. That's hot, boys. So I'm trying to figure out what I want out of it, whereas I want to, I guess before I end it, it's what I'm trying to go for. That's what we're doing now in the writing series. I don't know what I'm going to call it. That's what we're doing. And so I'm trying to give you an epic fantasy novel, because that's what it is, because I do have, not to that level, but I do have what I call my Silmarillion, which is this massive, enormous, world-spanning history, but I don't want to tell you that. You don't care about that. You don't need to know when I enter, 3 streams or something like that, we go here, and 2,000 years ago, the Sanadai invaded, and the elves broke off, and due to this great cataclysmic issue, this happened, and it changed you don't know. You think you want that. That's what I'm getting at. You like the idea of that being there. You love that. But you don't want to read that. Here's a huge thing. And I'll call them like a power word or something like that. There'd be a different word for it, but he was in a jet flying over New York City. In a sentence, it's not a good sentence, but in that sentence, your brain is going to understand jet, flying, New York, you're there. Do that in a fantasy setting. If I have a city that basically is New York, I got to go, this is the most populous city in the East, and over 1,000 years ago, this happened, and now there's 3 million people there of a diverse melting pot culture. And there, I don't want to say it like that. There's a way to give you that information, right? Without like fucking massive exposition lore dumps. Some people love the lore dumps. I don't. I hate it. I realize that as I read it. I don't want to know it. I like the idea of it. Give it to me with a character passing through in a sentence, right? It's almost like show, don't tell. So I got to wrap this up before we go. We'll do more of these, but that's basically where it's at, where we're trying to break it down. We're trying to condense it. I want to give you the epic fantasy. You want the epic fantasy, but you don't want to sit down and go, oh, that's a 1,200 page manuscript. And so many people lately, I've heard them, you know, when they're talking about books, especially with romantasy, it's like, oh, you know, you got to skip the first 2 books you got to get the third, though. That one's good. But then the 4th is shit. But there's a great part halfway through that goes back. And you're like, no, you're a shit writer. You can sell 1 million copies and still be a shit writer. That's shit writing. You suck. If at any point you look at me and go, ooh, half that series sucks. It sucks. You suck. Sorry. You suck. It's like Peaky Blinders. Look where Peaky Blinders went. It sucks. It sucked. The ending movie, Immortal Man, was dog shit. It was garbage. It was awful. That series fell off. Does Peaky Blinders suck? No, it fell off. You know, and if I looked at you and said, you want to watch Peaky Blinders? I go, season or 2. House of Cards, same thing. Ended at season 2. We don't want to do that with the book. We don't want to do that with Gemmell. We want to give you something condensed and competent and coherent and flowing, and that takes a lot of time. And I'm realizing now that a lot of writers don't put that time in because it's a lot. It takes a lot of effort. I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to pull it off or I'm somehow superior, but that's what I'm going for. That's the struggle with the writing. I don't know if anybody else has that difficulty, but it is something that in your own writing you really need to think about is how much do we want the reader to know? How much does the reader actually care about? What do you care about? If you're bored while you're writing, your reader's going to be bored. You suck. You know it. If you get bored and you get that like wall, it's time to move on. That scene's dead. And you could get a writer's block for many different reasons, but if you're writing and you're like, I'm not really feeling this, it's probably because it sucks. Like you've written yourself into a corner and you've done something wrong and that sucks. And hopefully you can fix it. And that's, you know, a great issue of mine lately is trying to just make all of those pieces come together because it's the big one. And there's the harsh reality that I'll probably finish at least 1, maybe 2 other works, whether they're short stories, like novellas, 50,000 words, nothing big, or at least a full other novel before I actually finish Gemmell, because I need to be able to, as I'm writing it, when I read it, and while I'm writing it, I need it to have that, where you go, this just makes sense, this is good, like we're not lingering, that's a good pace, I want it to be fast paced, we're moving along. We are getting to where it needs to go, where it needs to be. That's episode 1.